The alien crowd roared with anticipation as the arena lights flickered and dimmed, signaling the start of the next battle. Towering screens illuminated Gorkak's figure, his reputation as the undefeated gladiator flashing in bold letters across the arena. His victories were etched into every corner of this coliseum, a constant reminder of his strength and brutality. He had crushed every challenger, none had even come close to touching him. Today, however, something was different. Gorkak's massive form stood in the center of the ring, his crimson eyes scanning the crowd with boredom. He barely paid attention to the new opponent stepping into the light. The crowd hushed for a brief moment, then erupted in laughter and boos. Standing at the opposite end of the arena was a human, slender, small compared to the alien behemoth before him. Marcus Reynolds, Earth's champion, held his ground, but in the grand scale of this arena, he appeared insignificant. A human? Gorkak's voice boomed, mocking as his lips curled into a sneer. This is what they sent to fight me. Pathetic. Marcus said nothing, his expression unreadable as he stretched his neck and rolled his shoulders, preparing for what was to come. Unlike his opponent, he wasn't here to show off. His quiet, disciplined demeanor seemed to fuel the crowd's amusement even more, their jeers growing louder with each passing second. They didn't understand, not yet. The arena lights glared down, bright and unforgiving, casting long shadows across the sand. Marcus inhaled deeply, centering himself. He had trained for this. Not just for physical combat, but for a mental game, a game that would exploit Gorkak's arrogance. The alien's strength was undeniable, but strength alone didn't win battles. Strategy did. And that was where Marcus excelled. The bell rang, the sound slicing through the cacophony of the crowd. Gorkak wasted no time, charging forward with terrifying speed, his heavy footsteps pounding into the ground. Marcus watched, calm, waiting until the last possible second before sidestepping out of the way. The wind from Gorkak's missed strike whipped past his face, but Marcus barely flinched. The audience fell silent, their laughter stilled. Gorkak snarled, swinging his fist again, only for Marcus to dodge effortlessly once more. There was no panic in Marcus' movements, no wasted energy. Every step was calculated. Stand still, human! Gorkak roared, growing more frustrated by the second. The alien swung wildly, but his blows met only air. Marcus continued to evade, using the alien's bulk against him. Gorkak's powerful punches, which had crushed so many before, were useless against an opponent who refused to play by the same rules. With each missed strike, Gorkak's breathing grew heavier. His enormous frame lumbered forward, slower with every attempt. Marcus remained focused, biding his time, looking for the right moment to strike. He could hear the crowd murmuring now, their confidence in Gorkak beginning to waver. In the corner of his eye, Marcus saw the shift in Gorkak's stance, a subtle but telling change. It was a sign of desperation. Gorkak lunged again, this time leaving himself open. Marcus seized the opportunity, stepping in close and delivering a precise kick to the back of Gorkak's knee. The alien's leg buckled, and he stumbled forward, barely catching himself before collapsing. A stunned gasp rippled through the crowd. Marcus stepped back, his breathing steady, eyes never leaving Gorkak. This wasn't over yet. Gorkak snarled, struggling to his feet. You dare! His voice was a mixture of rage and disbelief. He had never been touched, much less brought to his knees. The thought of losing to a human, of all creatures, enraged him beyond reason. Marcus remained silent, his face impassive. He knew the fight wasn't about proving his physical prowess. It was about breaking Gorkak mentally. He was close, he could see it in the alien's eyes, the flicker of doubt creeping in. Gorkak charged again, but this time his movements were sluggish, predictable. Marcus anticipated the attack, ducking low and spinning behind the alien, delivering a swift blow to Gorkak's exposed ribs. The sound of the impact echoed through the arena, followed by Gorkak's pained grunt. The crowd, once so sure of Gorkak's invincibility, now watched in stunned silence. Marcus could feel the shift in the air. They were no longer laughing. He was proving something not just to Gorkak, but to all of them. Humans weren't weak. They weren't to be underestimated. Gorkak roared in frustration, his heavy fists pounding into the ground as he missed yet another swing. His movements were growing erratic, his breath labored. Marcus, meanwhile, was as calm as ever, his focus sharp. He wasn't tiring, he was only getting started. With one final effort, Gorkak gathered all his remaining strength and swung at Marcus with everything he had. But Marcus was ready. He stepped inside Gorkak's reach, grabbing the alien's arm and using his momentum to flip the giant gladiator onto his back. The ground shook with the force of Gorkak's fall, and for a moment, the arena was deathly quiet. Marcus stood over Gorkak, his chest rising and falling steadily. He had won. The impossible had happened. Gorkak groaned, trying to rise, but his body betrayed him. Marcus, his expression still unreadable, extended a hand. "It's over," he said quietly. "You lost." For a moment, Gorkak stared up at him, disbelief etched on his face. Slowly, reluctantly, the alien reached out and took Marcus' hand. The crowd, finally understanding what had just occurred, erupted into applause, their cheers deafening. As Marcus helped Gorkak to his feet, he glanced around the arena. The battle wasn't just about physical victory, it was about respect. And today, humanity had earned it. The bell rang once more, signaling the end of the fight, but Marcus knew it was only the beginning of something far greater. The air was thick with tension. The crowd's cheering from the previous match still echoed through the arena, but Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Gorkak, now standing beside him, still hadn't fully processed what had just happened. The once proud gladiator who had mocked humanity moments ago was now humbled, and it showed in the way he avoided eye contact. Marcus, on the other hand, remained calm, already sensing that the true battle wasn't over. As they left the arena floor, whispers followed them. Aliens of various species, once so sure of Gorkak's invincibility, now watched Marcus with cautious interest. Some still sneered, but others had a new spark of curiosity in their eyes. They had never expected a human to be anything more than a footnote in the galaxy's gladiatorial history, and yet here he was, victorious, standing where no other had dared. "How?" Gorkak's voice, though gruff, carried a tone of genuine confusion as they reached the shadowy halls beneath the arena. His massive frame seemed somehow smaller now, his pride wounded. "I've faced hundreds, thousands. No one has ever fought like that." Marcus glanced at him, considering his words. "You've been fighting with strength alone," he replied. "But strength without strategy is just brute force. You were fighting the body. I was fighting the mind." Gorkak's brow furrowed, his crimson eyes narrowing. It was clear the concept was foreign to him. His entire life, his victories had been built on his physical dominance, his ability to overpower his opponents with sheer might. But now, for the first time, he was being asked to question that foundation. "I don't understand," Gorkak admitted, his voice quieter now, as if the weight of his admission pressed down on him. "Why didn't you finish me? In the arena, you had every chance to strike the final blow." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "Because I wasn't here to kill you," he said simply. "I came to prove something, not just to you, but to everyone watching." The arena's underbelly was cold, lit only by the flickering neon signs guiding them to the gladiators' quarters. The low hum of machinery and distant murmurs filled the space, creating a strange calm after the chaos of the battle. Gorkak walked in silence beside Marcus, struggling to reconcile the human's words with what he had always known. "Where I'm from," Marcus continued, "fights aren't always won by being the strongest. Sometimes, the greatest victory is the one where no one has to die." Gorkak scoffed, though not as confidently as before. "You sound like one of those philosophers from the old worlds. You think your words will change the galaxy?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But they can change you." The silence stretched between them as they reached the gladiator quarters. As the doors hissed open, they were met with the stares of other fighters, aliens of every shape and size, many of whom had witnessed Gorkak's defeat on the arena's screens. Their eyes followed Marcus, some filled with contempt, others with begrudging respect. The air was thick with unspoken challenges, as if every one of them now saw Marcus as the new target. "You're not safe here, human," one of the gladiators, a hulking reptilian creature, growled as they passed. "Your victory was a fluke. Next time, it'll be your blood on the sand." Marcus didn't break his stride, his eyes forward. "I wasn't safe the moment I entered the ring." Gorkak glanced at the reptilian alien, a flash of anger crossing his face. "Enough," he barked. "Leave him." The tension in the room shifted again. For the first time, Marcus sensed something unusual, an emerging alliance. Gorkak, despite his defeat, had begun to respect him. And in this world, respect was everything. They reached a quiet corner of the quarters, away from the prying eyes of the others. Gorkak leaned against the cold metal wall, rubbing the back of his neck. "What now?" he asked, his tone heavy with uncertainty. "You've proven yourself. What's your next move?" Marcus folded his arms, his eyes steady on the alien champion. "I'm going to teach you," he said simply. Gorkak blinked, taken aback. "Teach me? You've fought with strength your entire life," Marcus explained. "But if you want to truly win, you need to understand more than that. I can teach you how to think like a strategist, how to anticipate your opponent's moves. It's not just about the body, Gorkak, it's about the mind." The alien's eyes narrowed, his pride flaring up again. "You think I need a human to teach me how to fight?" Marcus shrugged, his tone even. "I think you're smart enough to realize that brute force didn't work today. If you want to keep winning, you need to evolve." For a long moment, Gorkak said nothing. The offer hung between them, an unspoken challenge of its own. And then, slowly, the alien gladiator nodded, though reluctance still tinged his expression. "Fine. Show me." A sense of anticipation gripped Marcus. This was the beginning of something far greater than a simple fight. He hadn't come to the arena just to prove humans were strong. He had come to change the very way the galaxy viewed combat, viewed humanity. And now, he had an opportunity to do just that. They trained in the shadows of the quarters, far from the prying eyes of the other gladiators. Marcus taught Gorkak the principles of human martial arts, focusing on agility, precision, and anticipation. The massive alien struggled at first, his body accustomed to brute force. But slowly he began to adapt, his movements becoming more calculated, more fluid. "You're learning," Marcus said, watching as Gorkak deflected a series of quick strikes. "You're not just reacting anymore, you're thinking ahead." Gorkak grunted, sweat dripping down his face. "It's harder than I thought." "That's because you're used to winning easily," Marcus replied. "This is different. It requires patience." As the training continued, something shifted between them. What had started as a reluctant partnership began to grow into mutual respect. Gorkak wasn't just a brute anymore. He was becoming a true fighter, one who understood the importance of balance between mind and body. By the time they finished, hours had passed. Gorkak stood, breathing heavily, but there was a new light in his eyes, a sense of determination that hadn't been there before. "This isn't just about the arena, is it?" Gorkak asked, wiping his brow. Marcus shook his head. "No. It's about the galaxy. If you can learn this, others will follow. And maybe, just maybe, we can change how battles are fought." Gorkak smirked, though there was a hint of sincerity in it. "You're either a fool or a visionary, human." "Maybe both," Marcus said, his voice calm. "But we'll see soon enough." As they parted ways for the night, the air between them had shifted. The arena had been just the start. Now, something much bigger loomed on the horizon, something that would challenge not just the fighters of the galaxy, but its very future. The days following Marcus' victory over Gorkak were tense. Word of the humans' win spread quickly, circulating through the ranks of gladiators and spilling into the galaxy beyond. His defeat of Gorkak, once thought impossible, was now the catalyst for murmurs of change, whispers of revolution in a world long dominated by brute strength. It wasn't just that Marcus had won, it was how he had won, without brute force, without killing. In the training quarters, the air was thick with apprehension. The other gladiators, once so dismissive of Marcus, now watched him closely. The tension was palpable as Marcus and Gorkak continued their training sessions in the shadows, far from the eyes of most. But even in private, their practice could not go unnoticed forever. One morning, as Marcus walked through the arena halls, he felt eyes on him, more than usual. The cold metal walls seemed to hum with the anticipation of what was to come. He had heard the murmurs, the threats disguised as casual comments. Not everyone was pleased with the changes Marcus was inspiring. Some viewed him as a threat to the old ways, an anomaly that needed to be corrected. His footsteps echoed through the corridor until they stopped at the sound of someone blocking his path. It was Rorik, the reptilian gladiator who had threatened him days earlier. Behind him stood 3 more fighters, their eyes cold and unblinking. "We don't like what you're doing here, human," Rorik hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just come in and change everything? You think you're better than us?" Marcus didn't respond immediately. His calm expression never wavered, but he knew the tension was mounting. The gladiators who had once dismissed him were now forming alliances against him. "I'm not here to change everything," Marcus said evenly, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here to show there's more to winning than just brute force." Rorik took a step forward, his scaly lips curling into a snarl. "We don't need your strategies. We don't need your tricks. All we need is to crush you." Marcus could see it in Rorik's eyes, the desire to fight, the need to reassert dominance in a world that was slipping away from him. But this was different. This wasn't an arena match governed by rules and overseen by officials. This was personal, a confrontation in the dark hallways of the gladiator quarters where no one would intervene. "I'm not here to fight you, Rorik," Marcus said, holding his ground. "But if you push me, you'll see just how much more there is to learn." For a moment, there was silence, the tension between them tightening like a drawn bowstring. Then, with a growl, Rorik lunged. His movements were swift, his claws slashing through the air with a speed that had taken down countless opponents. But Marcus was ready. He sidestepped the initial attack, his mind calculating every movement, every angle. Rorik swung again, but Marcus moved fluidly, using his agility to stay just out of reach. Each of Rorik's strikes grew more frustrated, more reckless, until Marcus saw his opportunity. With one swift motion, Marcus slipped behind Rorik and delivered a precise strike to a pressure point at the base of the alien's spine. Rorik dropped to his knees with a snarl, his body stiffening in pain. The 3 other gladiators who had been watching stepped forward, but Marcus raised a hand. "This is done," he said, his voice carrying authority. "If you want to prove yourselves, do it in the arena, not in the shadows." The other fighters hesitated, their eyes flicking between Marcus and the fallen Rorik. Slowly, they backed away, realizing that brute force alone would not intimidate this human. They disappeared into the shadows, leaving Rorik kneeling before Marcus, his pride shattered. You got lucky," Rorik spat, his voice laced with venom. "No," Marcus replied calmly. "I used what I know. Just like you could." Rorik glared at him, his body trembling with anger and shame. But there was something else in his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty, perhaps even curiosity. Marcus could see it. The seed of doubt that had been planted in Gorkak was now taking root in Rorik as well. Without another word, Marcus turned and walked away, leaving Rorik to process what had just happened. This wasn't just a fight in a dark hallway. This was the beginning of a larger shift, one that Marcus had been anticipating from the moment he stepped into the arena. He hadn't come to prove humans were superior. He had come to show that strength, real strength, was about more than just muscle. As he made his way back to the training area, Marcus found Gorkak waiting for him, arms crossed, watching with a knowing expression. "You didn't kill him," Gorkak said, his voice a mixture of respect and disbelief. Marcus shook his head. "That wasn't the point. You don't need to kill to win." Gorkak nodded, though Marcus could see the wheels turning in his mind. The alien gladiator had changed since their initial confrontation. There was a new depth to Gorkak's understanding, a willingness to question the old ways and embrace something more. "The others won't let this go," Gorkak said, his voice heavy with warning. "They're afraid of you. They're afraid of what you represent." Marcus met his gaze, unflinching. "I know. But fear can turn into respect, given time." Gorkak smirked, though there was a hint of admiration in his expression. "You're either the bravest human I've ever met, or the most foolish." "Maybe both," Marcus replied with a small smile. "But either way, this isn't over." As the two of them resumed their training, the undercurrent of tension remained, but there was a growing understanding between them. Marcus wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for a shift in the very culture of the Gladiators, a change that would ripple through the galaxy itself. The battles that lay ahead would be more dangerous, more challenging. But Marcus had never been one to back down. He knew what was at stake, and he was prepared to face whatever came next. For now, the real war was only beginning. The arena was silent, a tense quiet before the storm. Marcus stood in the center of the ring, the familiar hum of the arena's neon lights casting a cold, metallic glow on the sand beneath his feet. This time, there were no jeers, no mocking laughter from the crowd. Every pair of eyes in the stands was focused on him, watching, waiting. Across from him, the towering figure of Corvin, one of the most feared gladiators in the galaxy, loomed like a mountain. His reputation was almost as fearsome as Gorkak's had been, but Corvin was different. Where Gorkak had relied on brute strength, Corvin was a seasoned warrior, known for his strategic mind and vicious precision. Marcus could feel the tension in the air, thick with the weight of expectation. "This is your last chance, human," Corvin's voice rumbled, low and threatening. His cold, reptilian eyes narrowed as he sized Marcus up. "Back down now, and I'll let you live. Stay in this fight, and I'll tear you apart." Marcus felt the ripple of fear in his chest, but he pushed it down, locking it away with the calm resolve he had learned over years of training. This was no longer about survival. This was about proving something far greater, that humans, often viewed as weak and insignificant in this galaxy, could stand among giants. His mind flicked to Gorkak, to Rorik, and the others who had begun to listen, to learn. This fight wasn't just for him. "I'm not backing down," Marcus said, his voice steady, betraying none of the anxiety gnawing at his core. "Let's end this," Corvin snarled, baring rows of sharp teeth as the bell rang. The sound echoed through the arena, signaling the start of what would be one of the most important battles Marcus had ever fought. Corvin moved first, his massive body surprisingly fast for its size. He charged forward, his claws outstretched, ready to tear Marcus apart. But Marcus had prepared for this. He knew Corvin was a thinker, a strategist. The key was not to fight Corvin's fight, but to draw him into Marcus' game. With a swift dodge, Marcus rolled out of the way of Corvin's first strike, rising to his feet just as the beast's claws sliced through the air where he had stood seconds earlier. The crowd gasped, and Marcus could feel the weight of their eyes pressing down on him. This was not like his fight with Gorkak. Corvin would not be easily frustrated or outsmarted by simple feints. He needed to be precise, calculated. Corvin swung again, but Marcus ducked low, aiming a strike at the creature's knee. His fists connected, but Corvin barely flinched, retaliating with a swift backhand that caught Marcus across the chest and sent him skidding across the sand. The pain shot through Marcus like fire, but he gritted his teeth, pushing himself to his feet. He could taste blood in his mouth, but he couldn't afford to focus on the pain. Corvin was already advancing again, methodical and unrelenting. "You can't win this," Corvin growled, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of certainty. "You're just a human." Marcus wiped the blood from his lip and smiled, a faint glimmer of defiance shining in his eyes. "We'll see." Corvin charged once more, but this time, Marcus was ready. Instead of retreating, he stepped forward, right into the path of Corvin's attack. The move caught the alien off guard, and in that split second, Marcus delivered a quick succession of blows to Corvin's midsection, each strike precise and deliberate, aimed at weak points in the alien's armor-like scales. Corvin roared in frustration, swinging wildly, but Marcus was already gone, moving like a shadow across the sand. He was faster, lighter, and Corvin's brute strength wasn't enough to keep up. The crowd, once silent, began to murmur. Marcus could hear the shift in their tone, the disbelief beginning to creep into their voices. For every attack Corvin launched, Marcus was there to meet it, not with raw power, but with finesse and skill. He danced around the alien's massive form, landing small, calculated strikes that wore down his opponent bit by bit. The tension in the arena rose with each passing second, the outcome of the fight no longer seeming so certain. Corvin's breathing grew heavier, his movements slower. Marcus, though battered and bruised, saw his opportunity. He couldn't overpower Corvin, but he could outlast him. The beast was tiring, his relentless aggression now working against him. Marcus sidestepped another wild swing and delivered a sharp kick to the back of Corvin's leg, sending him staggering forward. The crowd's murmurs turned to cheers, a shift Marcus hadn't expected. They were no longer watching an execution. They were watching a fight, a real one. Corvin, panting heavily, turned to face Marcus one last time. His cold eyes gleamed with fury, but there was something else there too, recognition. He had underestimated Marcus, just like Gorkak had, just like so many others had. But now, Corvin was learning the same lesson they all had. With one final effort, Corvin lunged, but Marcus was faster. He ducked low, sliding past Corvin's outstretched claws, and with a swift, precise strike to the alien's side, Marcus sent Corvin crashing to the ground. The arena erupted in applause as Corvin lay motionless in the sand, struggling to rise. Breathing hard, Marcus stood over him, his body aching from the fight. He had done it. He had proven that humans, with their minds, their resilience, could stand against the mightiest of the galaxy's champions. Corvin groaned, struggling to his feet, but there was no more fight in him. Marcus extended a hand, much like he had done for Gorkak. "It's over," he said quietly. Corvin, to Marcus' surprise, took his hand, pulling himself up. He glared at Marcus, but there was no hatred in his gaze. Only respect. "Perhaps you're not so weak after all." Marcus smiled faintly. "There's more to strength than you think." As they stood there, the crowd's cheers washing over them, Marcus knew this was the turning point. This wasn't just about winning a fight, it was about changing the way the galaxy saw humanity. He had come here as an outsider, but now, standing victorious in the heart of the arena, Marcus knew he had earned a place among them. And this was only the beginning.